Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another day of Core Set 2020 previews. We're going to recap and analyze all the cards that were previewed over the last 24 hours or so. As always, if you're curious as to the sources of the preview cards, check out the description below. All the information's down there. Also, if you're looking to pick up a Core Set 2020 booster box, they do have them at FlipsideGaming.com, and you can use that Heroes promo code to save a little money. That also supports the channel, always appreciated. But without any further ado, let's get into it. Cavalier of Dawn, this is a Japanese language preview. It's a mythic part of the Cavalier cycle. This card does have some positive qualities, but for 5 mana, it's not jumping out to me for standard. 4/6 Vigilance is a little underwhelming. The ability, though, is interesting. Destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. The controller then gets a colorless 3/3 Golem artifact creature token, so you can blow up something of your own that you don't need if you just need a creature on the fly, or if your opponent has something problematic that you don't have a better answer to, this is an answer. When this dies, return target artifact or enchantment from your graveyard to your hand. Maybe that's relevant some of the time, but not all the time. If there was a good Flicker deck in Standard, this might catch my attention a little more. Don't know if there's going to be enough pieces coming from this set to make that happen, most likely not. But you know where you can flicker a lot of cards and do a lot of crazy things? Commander or even Oathbreaker. So yes, I do think this card would be great in some of the builds there, and that's where I'd really want to play it. What about limited though for something like this? Yeah, it's a good limited mythic if you happen to get it. Those stats are a lot better in Sealed or Draft. The 4/6 Vigilance for 5 is going to feel pretty good, and then you have the abilities tacked on as well. The second ability, again, might not always be relevant, but that first ability will be relevant most of the time, I'm sure. There also appears to be some interesting combos with this card that might be out there. Like yesterday, we saw a Retributive Wand, for example. That would play very, very well with this if you happen to have both. This one is a Portuguese language preview, Herald of the Sun. A little too expensive again here for Standard. I'm not trying to fit it in there. But in Limited, this is a fantastic uncommon. 6 is starting to get on the expensive side, but a 4/4 flyer is always going to be powerful in Draft or Sealed. This has a good mana sink, but you do need another flying creature for it to be able to do anything. So, yes, you can actually target it appear as someone else's creature. Don't know why you'd want to do that in Draft or Sealed most of the time. So you really want to have one of your own flyers to sink your mana into, especially when the game slows down a little bit. Now, luckily, Jeskai colors do seem to care about flyers, so there should be a lot of options out there, not just in Draft, but even in your Sealed pool. Regardless, though, even if you don't have a ton of flyers in your pool, this is still a very solid card. Another place you could play this is in your Commander Angel Tribal deck. This one's an Italian language preview, Masterful Replication, and this is another one that feels a little too expensive for what it's doing in Standard for me. There are cards that can synergize with this in Standard and other formats. Saheeli Sublime Artificer is an example of that, but I think for the most part, the startup cost here is just too much, and the card is too dependent on board state to be great. I like flexible cards. This one does give you a couple options. This is also an instant, so usually I'm really on board with stuff like this. You can use this as a combat trick, but these are all reasons I would argue that it's a good limited card more so than a standard card when you're paying a blue and 5 for it. So yeah, in Draft or Sealed, this will be great. Even if I never use that second ability and I just simply create the 2 colorless artifact golem creature tokens, 6/6 power toughness on the battlefield for 6. It's very splashable if I need this and I'm not playing blue as a main color. It's a rare, it should be good in Limited, and it is. Now, outside of those formats, Commander, throw this in the Brutaclad deck, I think this could actually be very solid there. Portal of Sanctuary. Okay, this is an interesting card. I mean, you can play this sort of quick. It's a 3 casting cost 1 to activate artifact. But, return target creature you control and each aura attached to it to their owner's hands. Activate this only during your turn. So if my opponent is going to destroy one of my creatures, this doesn't have flash or anything, so I can't surprise them. And secondly, even if it's sitting on the battlefield, if they have an instant, well, they'll just wait until their turn. It's inconvenient, but it's not the end of the world for them either. So it's not great at protecting a creature. Why does it exist? It exists because of the limited game. In particular, Sultai colors do care about things entering the battlefield. So this is a way to take a creature, maybe it has a good enters the battlefield effect. Maybe you have another card that cares when something enters the battlefield. Return it to your hand, play it again for value. That's really the purpose here. So if you have a deck that is going to care about one of those things, if you're in Sultai colors, especially a draft deck, then this could be a good play for you. If not, maybe you skip it. One other word of warning, if an opponent plays a pacifism on your creature and you do this, they get the pacifism back, so just pay attention to that. Scholar of Ages. Okay, another kind of expensive card here when you're talking standard. So there's a big effect here. I mean, you're getting a 3/3 body, that's not nothing. And when this enters the battlefield, return up to 2 target instant and or sorcery cards from graveyard to your hand. Now, if you could blink this thing, again, it would be fantastic, but I'm not really feeling a standard blink deck, at least not at this point. We still have a lot more cards to see, though. What about control decks in standard? I just think they could be doing better things when we're talking 7 mana. Sure, they would like to get some of their spells back, but in a world where we have such powerful planeswalkers and Command the Dreadhorde and all that going on, I don't really think this is going to compete. I just think there's too many really good options when you're talking about these more expensive casting cost cards right now. Yet again, though, in a Blink Oathbreaker or Commander deck, this will be phenomenal. What about limited? You know what? 7 casting cost, that's a little bit high. And you might have some bombs, because once you're talking 6, 7, 8 casting cost cards, you might have a better bomb in your pool that you play instead of this. But if you end up playing this, I don't think you're going to be upset about it. You get board presence, like I said earlier. And also, in Draft Your Sealed, you most likely, by the time you're playing this, will have a couple removal spells in your graveyard. If you get a couple removal spells back, 3/3 on the battlefield, yeah, you could be doing a lot worse for 7 mana. That could even help you close out a game sometimes. This one is a Russian language preview card, and now we're talking a 1 casting cost 1/2, sign me up. These are the cards that I can play in standard. Knight of the Ebon Legion. So what does this thing do exactly? Notice that first ability is a mana sink, a black and 2, +3/+3, and death touch until end of turn. So if you have the open mana and this thing attacks, your opponent's got to do some thinking about what could be happening. If they decide to take the damage, they might be taking a lot of damage, especially if you have 6 mana open. This thing will be going up 6/6 potentially. They got to take that into account. Plus, this thing will get a +1/+1 counter if you even decided to pump it just once. Their other option is to block, and sometimes maybe trade down or chump. That's awesome. This puts them in such a tight spot for a 1-drop, it's incredible. Now, eventually, they need to get rid of it. At some point, maybe they do play a removal spell on this, but this only costs you 1. Most likely, you're going to be coming out ahead no matter what happens. So what can I do with this in standard? Well, I could take a Danto Vanguard and pay 4 life on each of my turns to add counters to this. Yeah, that's probably not where you want to be. But seriously, you could put this into Orzhov aggro. I think the card would actually be very good there. It is a vampire, which could be relevant in standard, and it's also a knight, which can be very relevant. Look at History of Benalia, for example. So yeah, I do think this does see standard play. Outside of standard and limited, yeah, this card is an awesome rare. If you get a chance to play with it, go for it. You're not going to be disappointed. Again, the economy here is just so good. In Commander, this will be good too, because of the relevant tribes, especially vampires, have been very popular in the format. Rotting Regisaur. Okay, I really like the knight, but this zombie dinosaur is kinda nuts. 7/6 for a black and 2. At the beginning of your upkeep, discard a card. What a terrible drawback. Oh, wait a minute, that's usually not even a drawback anymore in Magic. It's usually upside. Okay, so let's talk about this thing. Limited. Do I play this? Yes and yes is the answer. And here's why. 3 casting cost 7/6. That is a huge jump when it comes to power. Now, could you get burned by this? Could you have to discard some cards, and in the limited environment, you might not have a way to turn that into upside? Okay, I lost some cards. My opponent maybe destroys this at some point, and yeah, perhaps I did get blown out there. However, look at the upside. You gotta gamble. You gotta go for it. Because if your opponent doesn't have a good answer, they're probably just losing, and they're probably just losing quickly if you get this out fast. Later in the game, it's not going to be as good, but also the drawback won't be as bad because you might be out of cards anyway. So that's not going to really affect you that much. Standard, yeah, someone will build around this thing. I mean, again, the power and toughness for 3 is just too good, and there's so many ways to kind of turn the discard into an upside. There's reanimation strategies out there in Standard. Golgari does a ton of things where they care about what's in the graveyard. Or this just could be a part of a zombie or dinosaur tribal deck. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to see a real good brew around this card, and especially after rotation, who knows, this thing could become even more powerful. I'm going to go as far as to say modern. Look at the cards you have there, Gravecrawler, Bloodghast. Imagine playing Tarmogoyf on turn 2 and playing this on turn 3. That could be a beating, right? Madness cards are a consideration. There's also reanimation strategies already in Modern as well as Legacy. I think this card could show up in a lot of different places. Commander, it's a zombie, it's a dinosaur, it's a discard outlet. What's not to like? Sorin, Imperious Bloodlord, Mythic Rare Planeswalker. Black's getting a lot of good cards today. 4 loyalty for 3? I'm intrigued. Tell me more. I'll be honest, the abilities can be a little bit awkward because they all depend on other cards. The 2+1s need you to have a creature in play to be really great, and the -3 doesn't really do anything unless you have a vampire in your hand. Although, remember, all cards are vampires with Arcane Adaptation. Okay, maybe that won't be consistent enough in Standard, but if someone can work that out, I'd like to hear about it. So with all that being said, does this see Standard play? Yes, I do think it does. Even though it could have some awkward moments, I don't think that's a deal breaker. This could maybe be the shot in the arm that the vampire deck really needed to get one last push right towards the end. That deck has tried hard for many, many months now. It's come close a couple times, but it never quite got there. It wasn't able to ever sustain and get a lot of big wins in big tournaments. This card maybe changes that. I mentioned earlier how vampires have been popular in Commander for quite some time, so this would be perfect in those builds. And if you want to build an Oathbreaker vampire deck, this could be a great start for you. When it comes to limited, it's a mythic, it's a bomb, as it should be. Fry. Alright, welcome back to the days of color hosing, and this card is serious. Red in 1 instant. This spell can't be countered. Fry deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker that's white or blue. They might as well just do 5 damage to target Teferi on here, because that's what's going to happen. Think about Standard right now. All the Teferis that are out there. This thing is going to see a ton of sideboard play going forward. This is meta changing. This is a card that will change the meta. It is going to knock a lot of decks down a notch, and it could propel other decks up a little bit. This might even show up in Modern Legacy or Vintage sideboards to help deal with things like Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, Jace the Mind Sculptor, or Dak Faden. Limited, same thing. This will be great for you as long as your opponent's in at least one of those colors. If they are sided in Game 2 and Game 3, it will be great. Marauding Raptor. Okay, earlier I talked about how vampires are going to get a shot in the arm. Well, okay, it looks like dinosaurs are definitely getting a shot in the arm too. And we saw the absurd card earlier, but this is also very, very good. 2/3 for a red and 1, nice stats. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, perfect for dinosaurs. When another creature enters the battlefield under your control, this deals 2 damage to that creature, so that's going to trigger Enrage. And then this also gets +2/+0 till end of turn, so maybe you can get an attack off of this too. What? Okay, for 2 mana? One awkward note though, this along with Polyraptor creates a loop that will end the game in a draw if no one can break it, so there's that. Now, can the dinosaur deck really get there and make an impact in Standard? With these pieces, I feel like it has a very good chance. If it does, yes, this is going to see plenty of Standard play, at least until rotation. So outside of Standard, Commander Dinos, you got something else to play with here that's always nice. Limited, this is still a good card. Now be careful, obviously. If you have a lot of 1 and 2 toughness creatures, this might not be the card you want to play. But I do think as long as you can go heavy enough on toughness, getting a 2/3 on turn 2 will be great. And then all the economy you get later from the being able to cast creature spells cheaper, it'll be phenomenal, I think, in most builds. This one is a Spanish language preview. It is Leyline of Abundance, a brand new Leyline, and it is a good one. Like all Leylines, you have a chance to get this into play for free, and of course, that ability does get better with the London Mulligan. We talked about that before. And there's a mana sink attached here too. 2 green and 6, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Wow, okay. Standard. Yeah, I do think it's the Standard play in a ramp deck. You have Llanowar Elves, you have Paradise Druid, you have Nissa who shakes the world. You could ramp into Finale of Devastation. This is just all off the top of my head. Can that be consistent enough? Maybe. If not, someone will find something that is consistent. I have no doubt. There's enough power out there and enough good pieces to put something together. Modern Legacy? Maybe test this out in an elf deck, see if it can help you get to a Crater Hoof Behemoth a little quicker or something like that. It's at least worth trying out there. Commander, there's going to be decks that love this. Sure, elf decks might enjoy it, but also just going wide with tokens and being able to take your extra mana and pour it into these +1/+1 counters, that could get insane in a format where sometimes you do have a lot of expendable mana. And finally, in Limited, do I play it there? Yeah, you know what? I'm going to play this thing. Worst case scenario, I do cast it for 4 at some point. If I don't have any way to take advantage of the first ability, which maybe you don't, that mana sink might become relevant in the late game, especially if you're in some kind of board stall. But if you get up to 2 green and 6 and just play this ability once per turn, you're most likely winning that game unless you're already just really far behind. And I guess that's the problem with this card. If you're far behind, it's not going to catch you up. But if you're in a close matchup, it could just slam the door. Moldavine Reclamation. Earlier I mentioned that the Sultai colors care about things entering the battlefield. On some level, they also care at least a little bit about things dying, and that is evident here in this card. So, does this actually see standard play? A 5 casting cost enchantment that does nothing on its own? Yikes, I think that's going to be a little tough to sell. You look at this and think, well, maybe an Aristocrats, but I just think Aristocrats has more economical ways to do what they do than this. It's a great card once it's on the battlefield, but I think it's just a tad bit slow for standard right now. Maybe post-rotation that changes, though. With that being said, Commander. Notice this does not say non-token creature. So many things you're going to do with this card. You can go ahead and make tokens, sacrifice them, sacrifice other things, then bring them back, reanimate them, or just find other ways to loop things, like Enduring Renewal loops. Sure, this card could just be absurd in the right build. Limited, do I play this there? Yeah, you know what? I think I do. 5 casting cost to me is right before you're getting to the point where you're starting to compromise like real legitimate bombs. So I can play something like this and feel okay with it. The only thing I'm a little worried about is sometimes core sets do play really, really fast. If the format does turn out to be super fast, then maybe this is not a great card. But from what I've seen so far, it doesn't feel like it's maybe going to be as fast as some of the other core sets. So I'm comfortable with this. I do think once it's on the battlefield, it's going to be awesome. Your opponent's got some tough decisions. If you attack in with a creature that they normally could just block and kill, do they want to do that and let you gain a life and draw a card, or should they just take the damage? This just kind of tightens the net around them. And also, you know you're going to have creatures die over the course of the game, and look at the value you're getting when they do. Yarok the Desecrated. Okay, here is that mythic Sultai Wedge creature. This thing's pretty good. 3/5 for 5 mana. Of course, you got the 3 Sultai colors in there. Death Touch and Lifelink, and the ability is kind of reminiscent of Panharmonicon. That's kind of cool. So I mentioned earlier that Sultai does care about things entering the battlefield. Here's an example of that. If a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. That could be pretty good. Let's talk a little bit about standard first. Does this see standard play even with that casting cost? I think it could. Here's where I want to see this card, Sultai Midrange with the Explore package. This will also be good with Command the Dreadhorde. Commander, you know there's a lot of good things to do with it there. You can build around this card and make it your commander since it is legendary. Limited, it's going to be fantastic there too. Even if the ability never really does a lot for you, 5 casting cost, as long as you can swing the 3 different colors, you get a 3/5 with Death Touch and Lifelink. That will be great economy when you get a chance to play with this mythic. Here's an Italian language preview card. It is Scuttlemutt, originally from Shadowmoor, actually the only time it was printed. You can see here on the left side is the Shadowmoor copy for translation purposes, and it was a common, so it did get the upshift to uncommon, which I think makes sense because for the most part nowadays mana rocks are usually uncommon. So this one though has more to it than just that. And aside the fact that it can tap for 1 mana of any color, you can also tap and target creature becomes the color or colors of your choice until end of turn. So it can protect your creature from these color host spells we've been seeing, or these protection from color creatures that have been showing up. This will be great and limited. If you need a mana rock that can color fix while giving you board presence, this is a great card. Many times you'll just main deck it. If you don't for some reason, game 2, game 3, always side it in. Here's why. Your opponent's going to see what colors you're playing. They're going to go to their sideboard. They're going to pull out their color hose and their protection cards. Go ahead and just bring this in because it might help you. In standard, I don't really think this sees standard play right now, but I like that these cards do exist. If I need to deal with some kind of color hosing or protection card that gets out of hand, at least when it comes to creatures anyway, then yeah, maybe this does become a sideboard card at some point depending on where the meta goes. Also financially, foils for this card are around $5, so this reprint will give you another chance to get maybe a cheaper version if you wanted one for your commander deck. Temple of Epiphany, what are you doing here? Yep, we are getting some of the Theros block Skylands. We're going to look at the other 4 in just a second, but they are giving us the enemy pairings. So let's talk a little bit about these generally, and then we'll look at each one. First, if you're not familiar with these, they are from the Theros block, like I mentioned, and they are actually pretty good dual lands. You will find them occasionally in modern decks, not as abundant as Shocklands or Fetchlands, of course, but there are decks that like these. Traditionally, combo decks and mid-range decks will run these cards. Now, the 5 we're looking at today, for the most part, do see at least a little bit of modern play, and I'm sure they will be seeing standard play. Of course, you have less options in standard to choose from, and these are still a very good option regardless. Granted, they do slow you down a little bit coming into play tapped, but they kind of make up for that most of the time by smoothing out your draws, and that cannot be underestimated. These cards are also favorites among Commander players and Cube players. You might have noticed that this is new art, and yes, all 5 do have new art. We'll see it in just a second. Let's talk about Temple of Epiphany first. It was originally from Journey into Nyx. It did get a reprinting in Dual Decks Elves vs. Inventors. Both of those copies will run you about $2 to $3 currently. If you wanted a foil from Journey into Nyx, they do run about $7 or $8. Temple of Malady. This one probably sees the most play in Modern because it is in Abzan midrange decks. This was from Journey into Nyx as well. You can get those for about $3, and foils are about $5 to $6. Temple of Mystery. Now this one is from Theros. If you want to get the Theros version or the promo they did, they're about $2 to $3. Theros foils are about $3 to $4. Temple of Silence. This is also from Theros and will run you about $3. Foils about $4 to $5. And Temple of Triumph from Theros 2, and those will cost you about $2 to $3. Foils about $4 to $5. All right, that does it for today. Tomorrow we will be back, and we're going to do this all over again, recapping and analyzing the cards that come out over the next 24 hours. But until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page, as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.